Welcome to Harvest to Pour, the business of beverages, with your host, Matthew Shipp. This is the podcast for all of those who are involved in the agriculture all the way to the distribution of beverages. And now your host, Matthew Shipp.
Hello and welcome to Harvest to Pour. I'm your host, Matthew Shipp, and today I am here with Pete Moore, founder of Simplifying Entrepreneurship. He coaches business leaders through the chaos and confusion to create the businesses and lives they deserve. Welcome to the show, Pete.
Hey, thanks so much for having me. Excited to have a conversation here and excited to be with your listeners.
Yeah, thanks for being here. Let us know a little bit about yourself and how you got where you got. I mean, you've got an interesting business here, and I want you to, let our audience know about it.
Yeah. Long story short, condensed like the last 30 years. I have been a business owner for 30 years now, since 1994. I've owned franchise businesses. I've had service businesses. I currently own a couple of shoe stores, but we've 10x'd businesses, bought a cleaning franchise that had 30 clients and sold it when it had over 300. All sorts of different things in business over my 30 years. So I've seen a lot of different things and been in and out of a lot of different businesses. I just love business. It's just been such a big part of my life. And wouldn't change being an entrepreneur for the world. And these days, even though we still own a couple of shoe stores, one of the key things, like you said in the intro, is that, it's my belief that we become a business owner to have a better life. And if your better life isn't being lived through your business, then you got some work to do. And a lot of the things that we can get into today are really around how you're setting your business up, and is it being set up for a way that you can live your best life? Because if you kind of go back at it to for those of you that are business owners or thinking about business, it's really interesting because you're leaving a corporate job, you're leaving any other job or whatever the case, and you're saying, I'm going to go do this for myself. And usually it's because you have dreams of more freedom, of more money, of better relationships, of, living in a different way than you currently are. But so many small business owners fall into what I call the owner's trap, and they actually aren't living that. And it's kind of sad. And so my job as a business coach really is to help them start living their best life through their business so that their business is propping them up as opposed to them always propping their business up.
Oh yeah, I feel you there. So yeah, that you've definitely defined how I got into what I got into and the struggles I'm having as well.
Yeah.
So what really inspired you to move from like 30 years of just being a business owner into wanting to share this knowledge you have?
It's just been a lifelong thing, quite honestly. I've always shared. It's just, and, a lot of my friends that are in business would often come to me and say, hey, what do you think about this? Or what do you think about that? And so, several years ago, I just said, I'm going to hang my shingle and start doing this for people outside of my own network even, and work with a variety of different business owners. Like I said, I love talking business. I love dissecting problems and figuring out the ways that we can overcome those challenges. I call it turning frustrations into freedoms. And we all have frustrations, and it's not like I do too, but it's how do we understand them, clarify them, and then, make actionable steps that are going to make things better.
Okay. And what were some of the mind shift challenges you had while flipping from I am a business owner to now I am helping people grow their business?
So, some of the big things from a coaching perspective is, and I'm also certified in Kolbe, and Kolbe's whole it's assessments essentially around how you take action. And one of the big mindset things that which is why I became a Kolbe coach. One of the reasons why I became a Kolbe coach is because not everybody thinks the way that you think. And I'm talking to you, the listener here, because as business owners, we often think that it needs to be done in a given way, and it needs to be communicated in a different way, and the process needs to be followed in a given way. But ultimately, people do things differently. And for us as leaders, we need to understand how they make decisions, how they communicate, how we give them information, how they give us information, so that things run in a more simple manner and things can be done without sort of concern and all this other sort of stuff that comes into play when we think people should do like the way we look at it from a leader's perspective, because they aren't the same as you in a lot of cases, and we need to understand that. So I think that was sort of a big overcoming for me as a leader as I came up through this. And even as I'm working with other business owners, it's like, oh, they just see things differently than I do. I would have done it this way as we have our conversations, and they're choosing to do it a different way, but we need to sort of understand how that operates.
Yeah. So I love that because I come to people from the point of you have the knowledge, I'm going to help you focus that knowledge down, and then that way I don't have to worry about being the consultant. I can be more of the guide.
Yeah.
And that really help and they create it. So and people tend to hold on to or care more about the things they create. So that usually works as a very incentive for them to actually get through their goals they set for themselves.
Yeah, you use the word simplify. And I mean, that's one of the reasons why I called my coaching business Simplifying Entrepreneurship, because it isn't simple. And part of our job as coaches, right, is to help them clarify and simplify, because, you know, a lot of times a business owner doesn't have anybody else to talk to.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
it's like
very true.
Their partner at home is tired of hearing it. Their friends don't know what the heck is going on because they're not business owners. Mm-hmm. They may not have other sort of people in their sort of immediate network that they can actually talk to. So people like you and I, it's like a lot of times we're sounding boards for stuff so that we can actually just let them get it out. And once they get it out, it's like, okay, you've already kind of said what you need to do. You just needed to get it out. And that's part of our job as coaches, is to let them get it out.
Being that third party that they can just kind of use you as, I don't know, like lack of a better term, punching bag.
Yeah.
I stumbled on by accident just by talking to a client. And then one day we was just going on and on. He stopped. He goes, boy, I really needed that. I'm like, I think we need to do this more often. And that just kind of became part of my business. So yeah, the necessity just threw itself into us, and it's there whether you're going to be coaching or you're not. If you're that outside person, pay attention to that.
It's interesting, although we aren't registered therapists, there's a certain amount of therapy involved. And part of it's just, like I said, letting them get it out so that they can talk through the issues that they're having, because most often they got nobody to talk to.
Yeah. So we are a beverage and food podcast here. So I usually take people through, when I talk to owners, I talk them through their harvest to pour journey, and they do the harvest of where they're sourcing the ingredients, how they make what they make uniquely theirs, and the pour is sort of their marketing. And within that journey, and we can just kind of treat it as a journey for a business. Where do you usually find yourself helping them most within that? You know, they're either the marketing, the development, or just that underlying managing the business.
Yeah. You know, one of the interesting things is in our pre-conversation that we had the other day before we hopped on live, I was saying my son worked right from literally harvest to pour, where he worked in a farm harvesting hops, and then worked in a local brewery for many, many years. It was the assistant manager there, and actually served the beer that, you know, they grew on the farm that he worked at harvesting. And so farming, all of that sort of, this is a very understandable marketplace for me when I look at all of this stuff. What do we do at Simplifying Entrepreneurship to help that journey along the way is really, like you said, it's really cleaning up process. It's really, most of the time, small business owners, all of the process is in their head. And if the process is all in the head, then no wonder you're making every decision. No wonder you're opening the door, turning on the tractor, closing out the till at night, doing every little thing, not being able to go away on vacation, because you haven't even got the process out that somebody else can follow.
Yeah, put it down. So it's also getting just trapped in the weeds of your head.
Yeah.
Everything is constantly moving, and you're never going to be able to settle on one thing.
Yeah. So, I mean, I wrote a small book called The Business Owner Breakthrough around the 5P structure that I have. And just, I know we're not going to dig into it much, but the idea around that is that understand your promise, whatever the promise is to your clients. Align your products, your process, and your people to that promise so you can have the right amount of profit. Because without the right amount of profit, you'll never be free. But it does take some alignment between the product. It does take some alignment in the process. And if people can't understand, we were talking about clarifying and simplifying. If people can't understand the process and it isn't in a simple, understandable, repeatable method, then you're never going to be free. And people will say, no matter whether they're the farmers or the restaurateurs or the barista or, what doesn't matter. Well, we do things differently and you can't just put it down in process. Well, yes, you
totally.
can.
Yeah. So that goes right back to a lot of these beverage industries, whether it be a coffee shop or a brewery, they all have these checklists for their employees. And I often hear that, well, they're not following the checklist. I'm like, well, they're not following the checklist. There's something wrong in the process.
Yeah. And the accountability.
The accountability as well. But they are reinterpreting something different than the way you intended it. So that we have to take a look at that.
Exactly. And a lot of time, if it's like, there's a lot of things, like we could talk for hours just on process, but there's non-negotiable processes. Like the Big Mac is built in a given way. It doesn't get built in any other way other than that way. And for those that remember the jingle, all beef patty, lettuce sauce,
Jeez.
Yeah. So, there's a way, and that is the way. And a lot of times the business owner might have process. They might have the book written. They might have the checklist, but they aren't actually holding people accountable to it. So I've got another structure called the CPA, which is not your chartered professional accountancy. It's, as a leader, you need to really be always thinking about communication, process, and accountability. And all three of those need to work in combination in order for you to have a successful business. And so in that case, where the person's saying, well, they're not following the checklist, it's probably because whoever's accountable for that checklist is not holding them accountable.
All right. So I also want to get into, in our earlier discussion, one of the big problems, and I thought this was really hit a key with me, and I think it really hit a key with a lot of the beverage industries that I've talked to and worked with, is understanding their value.
Yeah.
So when it comes to that problem, what challenges do you see and where do you come in? Why is this important across the board, from beginning your business all the way to exiting your business?
Exactly. So, I am a certified exit planner, and I work with people helping them set their business up to be sold, whether that's 1 year down the road, 5 years down the road, or 10 years down the road. Part of that is just understanding what is your time frame, but getting into the valuation. It's an interesting thing. Most people, their business is their most valuable asset, often more valuable than their house, which for most people is their most valuable asset. But they don't actually know what the value is. They know what the value of their stocks are. They know what the value of their bank account is. They know what the value of their house is, but they don't actually know what the value of their business is. Yet it's their biggest piece in a lot of cases of their entire portfolio. It's such an interesting thing. And here's how most people determine the value of their business. They say, oh, well, such and such farm down the road for me sold for $1.3 million. So mine should go for that. Or such and such restaurant or coffee shop or whatever the case sold for this. So I should be able to get that. That's not the way to do a valuation. And the valuation needs to take into play those kind of things as parts and pieces. But there's a whole lot more, and you've got to dig into the numbers. You have to have clear numbers in your history. And are you growing? Are you shrinking? All of the different, what is your profitability? Are the numbers clear? And if they aren't, we need to recast the numbers so that we actually have a true recognition of what the EBITDA is. And EBITDA, for those of you that don't know, are earnings before interest and taxes as part of your accounting. And so there's just a variety of different ways to understand the valuation of the business. And then once you have the valuation, you have a benchmark. And the benchmark is, now, does this actually make sense for the life that I want to live? Because every quarter, half year, or year, you should be looking sort of at your valuation and saying, do I want to keep this and grow it? Do I want to sell it and retire? Do I want to sell it and take that money and put it into something else? Like, you should be thinking strategically all the time. Or do I want to keep this thing and buy 2 more stores or 3 more farms or whatever the case is? That's part of the strategy, but you need to actually start with understanding what the true valuation is, not just some sort of idea of what it might be because somebody down the road sold I'll use an example. A person came to me the other day and said, I want to sell my ice cream shop, and another one in the same town, kind of maybe not too far away, sold for $180,000. So they thought they should get $180,000. Well, I can tell you, after I took a look at their business, I basically said, I don't think your business is sellable. And they were like, it was a slap in the face for the person, but it's the reality. I mean, they were a seasonal business. He owned the building, so he didn't charge himself rent. He was showing a profit of $20,000 for 8 months in the year, and he worked in the business all like most of the time. And I'm like, nobody's going to buy this business. And you need to know that. Like if you're counting as part of your next piece of selling this business for $180,000 and you can't sell it at all, that's a problem. That's a structural problem that's going to affect your life and your legacy.
And now a word from our sponsors. Exit 11 Coffee is there for your on-the-go lifestyle. With 8 convenient drive-through locations, they bring quality coffee to your car window. Need it sugar-free, dairy-free, or keto-friendly? At Exit 11, you call the shots. They've got options for every diet and taste. The best part, every sip supports local farms and businesses. So swing by Exit 11 Coffee, where great taste meets small town values without slowing you down. Hey, are you spinning your wheels trying to figure out what will really boost your business's bottom line? At Emberry Solutions, our Profit Priority Workshop is here to cut through the noise. We help you zero in on what truly matters, aligning your team, optimizing your processes, and magnifying your profits. Imagine your business running smoother than ever, with every decision and effort leading straight to increased profits. That's what focusing on the right priorities can do. Ready to boost your efficiency and profits? Visit Emberry Solutions and let's start making your business work smarter. At Emberry Solutions, we take your business from bottlenecks to breakthroughs.
So what happens when somebody is in a situation where maybe they tried to start a secondary business and it's not going so well and everything's there, it's turnkey, but it's not in operation? I know those are very difficult to sell, but how does somebody get that albatross around their neck off at that point? In most cases, that becomes a liquidation.
A liquidation? Okay.
Yeah. In most cases. Like, and if it doesn't have history of any profitability, generally the assets are sold in liquidation, which is what I suggested to that ice cream shop. I'm like, it's a viable business, but you own the building. You'd probably be better just to rent it to somebody else and take your $2,000 a month rent and rent it out. And then you don't have to work there. You can go work somewhere else and sell off your, he said, well, I've got $30,000 worth of equipment. I said, how old is it? He goes, 6 years. And I said, is that at new cost or is that, depreciated value? And he said, no, that's what I paid for it. I'm like, well, it's after 6 years, it's not worth 30,000.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay.
So, I mean, these are the kind of things that we need to go through in a logistical sort of systematic way to have a better understanding of the value creation that you've spent time. And sometimes there's nothing there and it's sad, but true. But at least if you know that, now you can go and make the changes that you need to make within your life so that you can have a better life, because that's all part of why you got into business in the first place. But I've had failed stuff. I've had a failed store that cost me my cottage. I had to sell my cottage to get out of that one.
Wow.
And so, I mean, things happen as business owners, and that's why being a business owner isn't for everybody. It is risky, and you do need to make the right amount of profit to cover those risks. Because if you had $1 million and you invested it in the stock market and your average rate of return is 7%, you'd make $70,000 a year just having it sit there, as opposed to you working in your $1 million business to earn 70,000 full time and then some,
and just to do all that. Yeah.
But that's a reality. It's a reality. If you've got those kind of dollars, when you're going to go buy a business for $1 million, is this the best use of your money? And if it isn't, it's not a good buy.
Yeah.
And we have to tell people that who own the business to get them in the head that you listen, you might have a perceived value of this, but anybody else, they're going to look at their $1 million and they're going to say, well, if I invested in this brewery, what's it going to return to me? And how much of my time is involved? And what strengths can I bring this to grow? Because anybody who buys a business isn't buying it to just do what they do. You're buying the business with the thought that it's going to grow, like any other investment.
Okay.
And so getting in that sort of headspace of looking at your business from a buyer's perspective is very, very interesting.
Yeah, it seems to be almost a very just, and by its nature, predictive model to some degree, because, and that's where I was like, the earlier you understand this, the better. Even if you're not planning for exiting, it's like, well, I can do this next year or the next 2 years, or hey, these things worked this year. Let's make sure we, have our Christmas merchandise on the shelves this month, not this month, or so along
For
those lines.
sure. And I mean,
Right.
all of these things as we look at this, I mean, the value builder system that I support and coach to really is around 8 key drivers. And those 8 key drivers, we won't go into them all, but basically, as you understand where you're sitting with those 8 key drivers, and they sort of revolve around, of course, your finances, are they clear? Your growth potential, your supplier base, customer base, all these different things, your people, your process, all of those things are included into the 8 key drivers. But you rate yourself essentially, and you got to be honest with yourself, when you're rating yourself on this, but you're rating yourself on these 8 key drivers. And then we come in, have a little meeting, and it's like, all right, what are the action steps that we're going to do to increase these 8 key drivers? Because if you're humming with all of these 8 key drivers and you're in the upper echelon of each of those ones, your business is so much more value. And if you think about, has so much more value, if you think about it, growing a revenue by 10% is going to net you another whatever 10% of profit. But if you're growing value by 10%, and at the end of the day, your multiple on that business when you go to sell it is not 2 anymore, it's actually 5 because you've done your work. Well, 2 times profit versus 5 times profit is a big difference. We're not just talking a couple of dollars. And so the lens that you should be looking at is always growing value in your business, not just growing revenue, because there's a lot of businesses out there that have revenue that have no profit, and they have no systems, and they're totally owner dependent, which basically means they're not sellable.
That's true. I like that. So on that note, for the business owners listening right now, what is one thing they could do right now to improve on understanding their value?
Clean up your numbers.
Clean up your numbers.
The biggest one I see out there. People don't understand their accounting. They've got all kinds of stuff hidden in their business because they're trying to lower their taxable income. And I understand that. But if you can't prove that, like 2 years, 3 years back, why you had no income, and you can't actually, you don't have the notes on this kind of stuff to go back and say, oh yeah, well, I took a trip to Germany to look at some hop farm in Germany, and that was part of my expenses that year. But if you can't explain that and have detailed data and understanding to the new owner, who might not want to take that $20,000 trip to Germany that you took, and now they're going to recast that into the potential of earning $20,000 more in their business, those kind of things are hidden in most small businesses across North America in order to reduce our taxable amounts that we're going to pay. But it doesn't help your valuation, because people pay on profit as a big portion of the rest of this. And they do also pay on the other 8 key drivers, as we had talked about. For sure, it's a very big part, but most people want the numbers first. And if the numbers aren't clear, it's a problem.
Okay. Well, that's great advice. Thank you very much for that. And if they are challenged with that, that's usually kind of where you can get into finding an accountant or finding a fractional CFO to kind of help guide you through that. And does that help you in your job when you start working with them, if they start getting their numbers cleaned up before they see you, or is it something you encourage them to do after they're in with you?
Yeah. I mean, we need to have good numbers so we can make better decisions.
Okay.
And part of my job as a coach is helping them make better decisions. So yes, we need to have real clear numbers, and we need to be going over them and understanding them. And I think one of the things I do as an exit planner too, and business coach, is I help people understand the need for professional help. And professional help means that, like, you need to have somebody that understands numbers. If you don't have them on your team, then we need to find somebody outside that's going to be your outsource partner. And that's great, whatever it may be, whatever level of business, but we need to have that as part of it. We need to have good legal representation. We need to have a good person on board to understand tax planning. We need to have a good person on board to understand human resources. We need to have we need to sometimes need to look for the right person for marketing in order to, come in fractionally or permanently. All of these different pieces, when we start to look at the business as a whole, become pieces of whether or not you're using internal people to do this or external people. But that's part of building the accountability chart, because when we build that accountability chart, if you are ultimately the say in every one of those boxes on your accountability chart, and the buck stops with you, then you're have a problem.
Yeah, definitely. Great, good key point. Something people reflect on when they're listening to this is, if you are the one person that everything's coming to, you're always being answered for. You're always being pulled in the fire, no matter how big the fire is. You've definitely got a problem.
Yeah, and
all right,
in the value builder system, the 8 key drivers, we call that one hub and spoke. If you're the hub and spoke, then it's taking down the value of your business.
Yes.
Yeah.
And some people, that's their sole focus right after that. I want to get out from underneath what I'm doing. And I'm sure there's a lot more to it than just, making sure somebody has accountability for something you don't want to do anymore.
That's interesting too, because a lot of people that basically say, I'm ready to sell my business, it's because they may not even be ready to sell their business. They just don't want to make all the decisions anymore. So once we start freeing them up of the decisions, that's part of the process in getting your business ready. They're like, oh, I'm actually enjoying what I do now, because I got rid of all the stuff I don't want to do, and I'm focusing on the stuff that I do really like. I've got some more of my time back. And now we go back and reflect upon the valuation. And it's like, I'm only working this many hours now in this business, and this investment that I have that's worth this amount of money is spitting me off this amount of money. This is a good investment. Maybe I'll just keep it. And if that's one of the decisions, that's an awesome decision. Remember when we started talking about it, understanding the value and understanding these things along the way helps you make decisions. And sometimes the decision isn't to sell, even though they went into it thinking it was.
Oh yeah. Yeah. You're bringing them back to why they started in the first place. So that's definitely a key piece. So I've got a couple more questions. Yeah. This one's kind of a fun question. I mean, I have to, it also, thank you again for wearing your beverage shirt today. That's awesome. I love it. So speaking on beverages, what is your favorite beverage?
I like rye. So,
rye.
I love a good local beer too, but I am a rye drinker, and the one that I drink the most is called 40 Creek Copper Pot. And it's from an Ontario company, and I just really love to have a rye. And I love my coffee. I have my coffee in the morning. I mean, there's pretty much
same here.
I certainly am a coffee fan in the morning time. I like to have a rye at night. And last night I went out with a friend of mine that I hadn't seen in years, and I had a local beer. So when I'm going into a local pub or something like that, I almost always pick up their local IPA. That's sort of on the beer side what I like.
Okay, great. It's always a fun question to ask. And is there anything else you'd like to share? Any kind of promotion events, or where can people find out more about that evaluation? I think that's just a key piece, wherever they are in their business. If they just want to start getting on that horse,
it really gets you into understanding those 8 key drivers, where you're sitting and what the work you need to do to build value in your business. And the best thing to do is just go over to one of my websites. It's called the Exit Ready Business, theexitreadybusiness.com. So there's a blue button there. It says take the value builder assessment. You click that, fill out a form. It will notify me. We'll hook on. And because it's a fairly in-depth sort of report, it's about an 18-page report and a whole slide deck to go through these different 8 key drivers. So we'll hop on a call for maybe half an hour. I'll explain it to you. And then you've got what you need to take action on yourself. Or if you want to hire me as a coach, I can help you along the way there too. But it really gives it to you in a simple, understandable way that you can take action on your own, and you don't even need me. It's like, now that I understand this, I'm going to start working on this.
Oh, wow. That's awesome.
Yeah.
So we'll have that in the show notes. And also I always want to reiterate, it might be the exit ready planner, but you don't have to do this because you're ready to exit. It's just making sure your business is exit ready whenever you want it to be.
Yeah. I think, on a closing note, here's an interesting thing, because it is, that is called the exit ready business, but exit strategy is just good business strategy. And Anybody who's listening here has probably felt this personally if you're in a group of business owners. 50% of the businesses in North America, people have to exit not because they want to, it's because they have to. And what happens is people die unexpectedly. People get divorced, and it causes exits in business. Partnership disagreements cause exits in business. People get in an accident and can't go to work, cause exit in business. There are a lot of reasons why people exit their business unexpectedly. And if you haven't done this kind of value builder work and you haven't put the effort and time into having your business run on wheels like this, you're going to lose value when you have to exit, because the one thing is that one day down the road, whether it's now, 5 years from now, 20 years from now, you will exit your business, and you want your business to be in tip-top shape when that day comes.
All right, Pete, that's great. I hope there's a lot of people listening to this one. This is a really great piece of value, something to consider, because this is ubiquitous. No matter whether you're a beverage business owner or ice cream owner or a bakery, whichever, this is something to highly consider looking into. And Pete, I really thank your story from 30 years of business experience, of successes and failures, and what you've taken from that, going through Kolbe, and really pressing on understanding the value of your business and how much it can do for you. And again, I'll have on the show notes your business exit planning, the big blue button. Don't forget the blue button.
Yeah.
And if you want to check them out over at Simplifying Entrepreneurship as well, and see how we might work for helping you out, getting you to that point. All right, Pete, I really appreciate your time, and thank you very much for coming on the show.
Thanks so much for having me. Make it a great day.
All right, thank you.
Thank you for listening to Harvest to Pour, the business of beverages with Matthew Shipp. Check the show notes for our guest contact information, and connect with Matthew Shipp on LinkedIn today.